Welcome back to Programming TV. Today I want to talk through a client's training who is a sports performance athlete. They are playing multiple sports, volleyball, basketball, track and field, and while they've done some weightlifting and CrossFit type things in the past, we're putting all that stuff on hold for the sports performance side of things, talking and interacting with her parents. So right now she's dealing with a spinal injury, which is going to be an important anchoring point to this entire program design that we go through. So that's a very important thing to know. Obviously that they're working with healthcare professionals, and I am not that. My job as a strength conditioning coach is to figure out ways that we can sort of work around that more than to specifically address it, because that's more of the job of a PT or working with the medical professionals at hand. So that being said, there are certain things that she's clear to do that she doesn't have pain doing, and those are the things that we're focusing on as she's continuing to rehab this problem that sort of popped up as a result of some of her sports-specific training that was happening. So that being said, what you're going to see is this is actually she was only doing 3 sessions a week, but I have a 4-session template. What that means is that you're going to have that one extra session each week, and it's going to get pushed to the following week. So if you do 1, 2, and 3 on week 1, your next week you're going to start on 4 and then go 4, 1, 2, and actually, etc. Like, it's going to continue to push obviously the next session off. So what you're going to see this one is actually what I just said, that session 4 and then sessions 1 and 2. So basically this is sort of like I don't want to call it a high-low approach, because even the more intensive sessions really aren't that intense relative to what you're probably seeing me write and program for people. But understand that she's going to have sport-specific practices that she's doing, and more so it's about keeping her strong and healthy and feeling good and ultimately like resilient joints when she's actually going through her practices. So yeah, that's important context here, right? So again, it's more of a high and then more of low, and on the low days, it's more aerobic work, more movement work, more hip range of motion and motor control, and as well as like core rigidity, bracing mechanics, those sorts of things. So again, all that being said, this is a very different type of program that I hope people will find value in hearing about. Let's dive in. So again, we're starting on session 4, even though it is going to be the first day of the week that she is going to be training. So this is sort of a carryover from the previous week based on the 3 sessions per week, but a 4-session template. So yeah, first things first, this is going to be a low session, and mainly we're working on core strength and posterior mobility. It's one of the things we've identified with her is that she has really tight hamstrings in general and tight calves, and just like ski boots for ankles, as Coach Chris would say, but also that the one side is affected way more dramatically than the other. So important things to know. So starting off, we're just moving her through a good range of motion, hip 90-90s, it's like windshield wipers, tabletop glute bridge, working on both shoulder extension as well as full hip extension, and then a high plank hold. Obviously, like that's the core strength component that we're going to see multiple times through this. We're next going to move into an A series of a Copenhagen plank, which is basically you put one foot up on to a bench, and other leg is going to be on the other side of the bench. You're basically in a side plank type position, but you're really working that top leg adductor really pretty intensively. We've done it with a different variation, sort of a modified version up to this point, but we're going to give her the harder variation here. So then we're going to have a clamshell raise, which is basically the opposite. So the Copenhagen is sort of working the adductor. The clamshell raise is going to be working the abductor. A B, that is moving femur laterally through space and sort of working that glute med as well. So kind of attacking different sides of the hip and then going into that supine hamstring stretch. So the good thing about a supine hamstring stretch is that it demands that the back is flat. You're going to be laying obviously on your back, and that is going to make sure that she's in a safe position for her spine. So all good things. We're going to hit that hamstring stretch multiple times throughout this week. Next, we're going to go into a tuck hold. I don't really care if she does that where it's hand supported or hanging up to her, but again, working on that isometric hip flexor strength and tying in through the core. Next, we're going to go into a barbell RDL. So hinging mechanics are going to be something that we continue to hammer and want to see and drive good improvements on. So No difference here. We're gonna, up to this point, I've actually, I am gonna add that 4-second lower into this as well. Just because I really want, it's easier to exaggerate the hamstring stretch that you get out of the movement when you are just really controlling the eccentric with an elongated lower. So barbell RDL versus something like a deadlift, there's still going to be some shear on the back, but we're really keeping it light and more so using it as a way to work on like the motor pattern, right? Like work on making sure that she is able to hinge with a neutral spine, which is going to be fundamental for her entire athletic career. Next, we got a banded monster walk. Again, this is going to basically you're in like a quarter squat and you have a hip circle on, you're moving back and forth. So 60 seconds is fairly long, especially if you're at sort of any real tension there is going to be pretty challenging. So again, working that outside lateral aspect of the hip and glute. And finally, we're back to the core once again. This time we're hitting a hollow hold, 15, 20 seconds. And one of the things that I've been cueing her to do is actively pressing the low back into the floor. A lot of people can get sort of into a lazy, hyperextended anterior pelvic tilt position when they're in a hollow hold and even going through gymnastics movements. So making sure that you're really actively pushing that low back into the floor is one of the things that's going to keep that pelvis in the orientation that we want it to be in. So that is our first session. Next, we actually are to session 1, which this is, again, they're not truly low-high sessions. It's sort of like low-moderate sessions. However, this one we're going to start off with a little bit of an aerobic dose. So I like to give these as like EMOMs or things that are like 30 seconds to a minute and a half, where it's like very clear versus like calories or something where you're not going to know exactly how long that's going to take. This way you can kind of turn off your brain a little bit more and just sort of start the work. So in this case, it's a 15-minute rotating EMOM. First minute is rowing. That could be an issue for someone with a spinal injury, but we're making sure that this is when she's fresh and that we're keeping it posture and form focused. And then we're going to go into the bike at a stronger pace where there's not going to be any, shear on the back or loading on the back, and not really having to worry about hinging mechanics, all pretty in a really basically zero eccentric environment on the air bike. And then the following minute is when she gets to rest. So basically she'll be recovering to go back to the row to make sure she's fresh and can focus on her form and be, sitting tall on that rower while she's doing it. So that was more so like warm up aerobic conditioning there. And then that's getting her nice and warm for our second part, which is, on this day, we also have plyos and pushing and pulling work. I actually flip-flopped them on this day. I felt like with the air bike being strong as the warm up, it makes more sense to give her a little bit of a break and let the legs recover a bit rather than doing fatigued plyometrics, which for the sports that she's in, basketball, volleyball, track and field, things like that, you don't want to necessarily be, almost always you don't want to be training fatigued plyometrics, right? You want them to be as high power output as you possibly can. There is a time for fatigue resistance, but I think you can do it in other ways besides plyometrics, in my opinion, that are better for it. So that being said, that's why I kind of flip-flopped these two, where I went into the pushing and pulling work. And plus, this was sort of a good ending point to the progression that she was working of pressing and pulling work, because I wanted to see where her bench press was at on this particular day. So a little bit of testing there, even though, again, it's not going to be, like a systemic, tension-based thing as much as, something else like a squat would be. However, again, just giving an opportunity to work on that in a fresh environment, and then also give her legs an opportunity to recover. So we'll do the plyometrics next. So EMOM 16, one bench press on the odd minutes, starting light, ending at heavy single. And then on the other minute, she's doing 12 seconds of max strict pull-ups with her body weight. I'm not sure exactly where her strict pull-ups are right now, to be honest. So because I don't really know, that's why I do that 12 seconds. And then also I'm saying if she doesn't get at least 2 consistently, I want her to add a light band assist just to help out with that, because I want to make sure we're getting quality and actually getting some reps in versus just like, if it's 1 rep every time, it's just, you're not accumulating any volume there. So then we're going to go into our plyometrics. I'm going to throw all these in here at once. Well, actually, it's only 2 elements. It's basically a warm up and then like one piece here. So first part is pogo hops, this is just preparatory work for the plyometrics. We haven't done anything to really get the Achilles going yet. So this is a good opportunity to do that. Pogo hops, 3 sets of 10. And then, basically doing those at a challenging effort or height. And then this time I'm having her go every 15 seconds. She's doing, for 20 total reps, she's going to be doing 1 vertical jump at max effort. So pretty low work to rest because I want each of those to be high quality. Next, we're going to go kind of back to some of that hip flexor lateral aspect of the hip strength endurance. This is actually probably just more like endurance. AMRAP for 3 minutes of a hurdle step over. She's putting the bar into the J cups of the rack and basically the top of her kneecap. So it's going to be kind of challenging to get over, but your shoe should be able to continue to move through those reps for the entire 3 minutes would be the goal there. And then finally, once again, as I alluded to before, we're going to go back to that hamstring stretch almost on a daily basis. I also have nightly routines that I give her that she does like before bed, at least several times a week. And this is, again, one of the staples that she's going to see there, but I also like giving it to her at the end of sessions after she's had, her nervous system's kind of ramped up a bit. It's a good calming thing to do as well. So hamstring stretch 3 by 1 minute. And again, she's only going to be doing the affected side on these. And then final session of the week is actually going to be session 2, which again is a lower session. So this week, because of, again, the alternating high-low thing, she's going to actually have 2 low sessions this week, where every other week she'll have 2 high and only 1 low. So this one, again, we're working on some of the aspects that are more movement-based. So in this case, we're going to be working on squat symmetry as well as hip control. So 5 minutes on the bike, easy to moderate, let's call it. And then our A series is going to be a box step down. Demands a lot of the lateral aspect of the hip, working on hip stability, even the arch of the feet to maintain good quality reps. And then also with that controlled eccentric makes it really challenging. Saddle pose, and then once again, that supine hamstring stretch that we keep going back to. So that's our A series. Moving into our B series. So we're going to do air squats, but this time they're going to be rig blocked. So basically you're going to stand in front of a pole where it's close to your face, and you are going to be going down at 3 seconds, pausing for 3 seconds, coming back up and resetting each for 1. So down 3, pausing for 3. And basically each time I'm trying to get her to be a little bit closer to the rig each time she comes back around to these rig blocked air squats, and trying to exaggerate as much of an upright torso as she can while also exaggerating her knee out, because she's got relatively long limbs relative to her torso and challenges with hip mobility and ankle mobility. It makes squatting really challenging, right? So continuing to work on the mechanics of the actual squat. And I'm not just going to blindly prescribe, like exaggerate your knee out or, cues like that. I'm not just going to blindly write that, but for someone who that's appropriate for, those are super helpful and necessary things to keep reminding them of, so that they continue to move more and more towards what would be considered like a gold standard for movement. And then we're going to go into a wide stance air squat, again with that exaggerated knee out. 3 sets of 5. 3 seconds down, 1 second pause at the bottom. So that was our B series. Next, into our C series. And again, we're basically, there's no, oftentimes if I'm writing for like a CrossFitter, for example, it's like A, and it has multiple things within A, and then B, and then like each of those are maybe working on separate qualities, for example. This is very much just like multiple supersets of things that are all sort of working on a singular quality, or, same very kind of narrow aspects like that you can see in the skeleton, right? Squat symmetry, hip control. That's all the stuff that we're working on here. So at this point in this RC series, we got a nailing hip flexor stretch with a banded distraction. So pulling the femur forward in the socket, and I'm cueing her to actively squeeze the glute and drive the hips forward during that. And then once again, that hamstring stretch with only the affected side being worked. Again, that's gonna be something that you can just do on a daily basis with some of these mobilities. D, now we got an elevated Achilles stretch. So foot up on a box, driving the knee over top of the toe, driving the heel down, using, even you can add a weight to that. A squatting groin stretch, using a 10-pound plate between the legs. Frog stretch, we're working on stretching out the groin, the adductors. And finally, a goblet squat, where you're kind of taking all those qualities and hopefully molding them and using them in the actual squat itself. And then finally, we have our E series to finish out here. And this is a ragdoll forward fold. It's a mouthful. 30 seconds. And Basically, you're just relaxing your head and neck, trying to round as much as you can. And again, typically I wouldn't do that for someone with a spinal issue. However, it is unloaded, right? It's just her upper body weight that's going to be pulling it. So not super worried about that at this point in her recovery process. And then that's going to be supersetted with a seal push-up, 3 sets of 5 with a 3-second pulse at the top. Again, that's another thing that you have to be a little bit mindful of someone with a spinal injury is that hyperextension. However, again, it's not like it's loaded. It's not like she's doing, a GHD sit-up or something where it's really dynamic. Again, this is very controlled doses of what we're giving her, and it's after she's extensively warm and ready to go. So there you have it. That is a week training for a sports performance athlete who's a teen. If you got other people that you'd like to see program design for, let me know. Thanks for watching and stay the course.